really about and what the occasion is for it. So the occasion is, the event is inspired by the poets themselves, first of all, which then turned into a book that just came out in Moscow, in Russian for now, and which is available over there in the back for sale for $25 if you like it. I'm not aware that it's unfortunately being sold anywhere else in New York at this moment, but it's also available online, of course. So the book, which most of these poets you see here are authors of, has three main topics. One which serves as a kind of center of gravity in this whole book, and in the 16 interviews with Russian and East European poets, is New York City and its, so to speak, mythological, historical, literary, of course, landscape. The second major topic being discussed is language and languages, and the very concept of what it means to have or not to have a native, or no longer to have a native language. Because nearly half of the poets sitting here have, in this or that way, tried themselves in their adopted tongues, either as translators or they may have just switched to writing in English at some point. And the third topic is diaspora, emigration, or simply moving. These are quite problematic synonyms and not quite synonymous to each other anymore. So the goal was to reevaluate, reassess the legacy of Russian and East European poets writing beyond or outside of their native geography, language, and cultures. And the poems, the texts that the poets sitting here will read today, they in a sense, of course, combine all three topics and definitely explore other topics about them. But mostly, because we are in New York City at Hunter College, mostly it is about the city. So after they've read one poem each for the first round in their native tongues and in translation into English, we will open the floor for discussing these topics and others. I may ask just the first question, then it's going to be yours. And then, time permitting, we will have a second round of poetry reading, and time permitting again, another round of discussion. All right, once again, thank you. So let me briefly introduce the poets who hardly need an introduction in this audience, but nevertheless. I forgot to say that we will be reading quite democratically in the alphabetical order. That's the only solution we could come up with. So the first poet, Polina Barskova, was born in Petersburg, at the time still Leningrad, where she graduated from the classics department of Petersburg State University and began writing at the age of 8. In '96, she moved to California, where she soon enrolled in the PhD program at the University of California, Berkeley. Right now, she has for quite a while been teaching Russian literature at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. She's the author of several award-winning books of poetry and prose. In 2015, her book Living Pictures received the Andrei Prize for the play and for the prose collected in it. But living in Massachusetts, Polina is certainly a strong presence as a poet and scholar worldwide, and especially in her native Petersburg and in New York, of course. Anna Frajlich was born in Kyrgyzstan, where her parents were evacuated during World War II from Lviv, which is now Western Ukraine, as we know, but which was then Poland. After the war, she lived and studied in Poland, but in '68, fleeing the political situation and other limitations, she immigrated to the US and has lived in New York ever since. She's a professor emerita of Polish language and literature at Columbia, and in Poland she is now recognized as one of the most important voices of the Polish diaspora. Andrei Gritsman, a native of Moscow, is a poet and essayist who writes in his native Russian and in English. He immigrated to the US in '81 and works as a doctor. In New York, he's not only a doctor and a poet, but also a very important presence on the cultural scene. He has curated a series of bilingual poetry readings at Cornelia Street Cafe and elsewhere in the city, and edited a literary journal called Interpoesia, which many of you know. He's the author of several books of poetry in both languages, as well as a very important book of essays, The Poet in Intercultural Space, Поэт в межкультурном пространстве. Anna Halberstadt was born in Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. She lived and studied in Moscow and came to New York in the late 70s. Her poetry can be described as tricultural, Russian, American, and Lithuanian. Immigration, displacement, Vilnius, New York, and East European Jewish history are the subjects of Anna's poetry and her professional life as a psychologist. More recently, she has published 2 books of poems, Vilnius Diary in English and Transit in Russian. Vasyl Makhno, a native of Kyiv in Ukraine, is a poet and essayist and translator and a playwright. After teaching comparative literature at Jagiellonian University in Krakow, he has lived in New York since 2000 and become the part of the city in the Ukrainian language. He works at the Taras Shevchenko Institute on 4th Avenue, and apart from being a prominent poet himself, he's an expert on Ukrainian émigré literature and culture. He writes in Ukrainian, but his works are inspired by a number of other East European cultures, including Polish, Russian, Jewish, all of which come together in his writings about New York City. Irina Mashinski, a geographer by training, she immigrated from Moscow to these shores in '91, just as the Soviet Union was collapsing. New York, which is, with its constant intermingling of languages and cultures, has become the pulse of her poetry, which she writes both in Russian and in English. She is the editor-in-chief of the wonderful Russian journal Storony Sveta and its English counterpart Cardinal Points. Apart from being a bilingual poet, Irina is also an active translator. In 2015, together with Robert Chandler and Boris Draluk, she published the monumental anthology, The Penguin Book of Russian Poetry, whose value is hard to underestimate and which we definitely use in our classes. Helga Olshvang came to New York in '96 from Moscow, where she graduated from the Institute of Cinematography. She's a Russian poet and a filmmaker, author of 6 books of poems and several films, including those about Anna Akhmatova, Dmitry Shostakovich, and incidentally, one of the authors of the book, who is unfortunately not here today, Vladimir Gritsman. Marina Temkina just came. She was born in Leningrad and came to New York via Italy, as many people during that time, in '78, with a wave of numerous other Soviet writers and artists, which we refer to as the third wave of Russian immigration. Her first job in New York was meeting refugees from other countries arriving at JFK. Her first book of poetry was published by the famous writer and dissident Andrei, whom some of you may know otherwise as Abram Terz, in Paris in '85. Since then, Marina has been writing poetry in Russian and occasionally in English, and her texts have become increasingly visual and performative, painstakingly exploring what it means to be an immigrant, a woman, a Jew, and a poet. Julia Trubikhina, who teaches at Hunter College and is one of my wonderful colleagues, is a poet who writes mostly in Russian, but has tried writing in English as well, as far as I know. Please correct me. Translate. And well, for this audience, Julie is someone you, of course, know. And finally, Tomas Venclova, who hardly needs an introduction anywhere in any audience at all. He's perhaps the foremost poet writing in Lithuanian language nowadays, a language that is spoken by some 3 million people worldwide only. I say that he doesn't need an introduction to any audience, I mean, first of all, of course, his native Lithuania, as well as Poland, as well as Russia, and the US. He has made each of these cultures his home, although he writes poetry only in Lithuanian. A dissident and member of the Lithuanian Helsinki group, he immigrated from the Soviet Union in '77, and after teaching at Berkeley and other universities, became a professor of Russian at Yale. And I am honored to say that he was my academic advisor in graduate school at Yale University. Since Lithuania regained independence, he publishes his original works only there, but translations of his poetry and journalism and other writings into foreign languages have come out in dozens of countries. Finally, let me introduce our wonderful student, Miguel Ariza, who will be reading some of the English translations of these poets to you. Please join me in welcoming the poets to Hunter. Thank you. We will read, as I mentioned, one poem each in the original and in translation, and then have a discussion.
Good evening, добрый вечер. It's a huge honor to read in this company. Thank you, Hunter, and thank you, Yasha, for bringing together, well, what Hesiodus would call a generation. Yet another generation of poets from Eastern Europe in New York. I do think that it's a remarkably curious and thought-provoking constellation of authors, languages, and relationships with this city. So it is a nightmarish situation of being the first, like at school, right? You know that you'll be cold.
It is a college.
Right.
So, you start with B. So.
I know. That I know. So I'll read a poem. If we make it that far as to the second round, to the second poem, I will read something more traditionally understood by myself as mine. I usually write really disturbing and sad stuff. But somehow now and then, and strangely enough in connection to New York, I do write something frivolous, which is nice, right? It's nice to write frivolous Russian poetry. Дышание. Гарлемское утро не особо щедро. Сморщенная цедра, солнышко сера. Хочешь, я Медея, не хочешь, Федра. Все это довольно явная игра. За стеною справа рэп и плески мата. За стеною слева самбо и дитя. За окном нечистым кучевая вата. Смерзшегося в небе бедного дождя. Март. И ты простужен, да и я простужен. Грипп, температура, очень горячо. Как мы нервно дышим, как мы странно дружим. Через острый угол, смуглое плечо наблюдаю. Утро в комнате суровой, время задержалось, затекла рука. Время раскололось, мир чужой и новый, как ручная кобра просит молока. Что ты хочешь, детка, власти, сожаление маленького взрыва в результате нег. Утро производит смех, неловкость, жженье, из него на Гарлем происходит снег. Человек-вонючка со своей тележкой мимо наших окон начинает путь, ежась и шатаясь со своей надеждой. Я ищу смириться и опять заснуть. Should I read the translation? Then I'll read the translation, of which I'm kind of proud more than of the poem, because it's obviously not mine, I don't translate. It's by wonderful translator Catherine Sepella, who is my neighbor where I live, so she has basically no choice. Life has brought us together. And though we all understand that translating formal Russian poetry is an accursed task, but she tries and produces, I think, some miracles. So, dышание, right? Breathes. This Harlem morning gives little comfort. The small sun, a buckled sieve, is grey. If you like, I'll be Medea, if not, then Phaedra. All this a pretty obvious parlay. From the right comes rap, fucking waves. From the left comes samba, some kid's cries. Beyond the dirty window a thin rains, a cumulus wad frozen to the sky. It's much. It's March. You have a cold, I too have a cold, the fluid temperature high one. Our anxious breathing brings us oddly close, past a steep angle. Your shoulder bone, I survey the morning from this grim room. Time has stopped, my arm has gone to sleep. Time split open, the world is new and alien. A trained cobra, it wants some milk. And what do you want? What do you wish, my baby? Conquest, sympathy, a little spat to follow the caress. The morning causes laughs, awkwardness, and heat. Harlem sees a snowfall from all this. A human stink bomb grabs his shopping cart. I watch him as he sets out on his way, shrinking, stumbling. I hope, my hope holds out. And then I go to sleep again.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Yasha and everyone. As my initial poem here, I decided to pick one that not only reflects my uprooting, exile, anchoring in New York, but also the previous generation, because the generation of my generation's parents went through enormous traumas. As children, they went through World War I, then World War II, and then in my case and case of many of my friends, through the emigration at the very fragile age. W słońcu. Joannie Rostropowicz. Znów czytam obcego w słońcu na plaży. Przy mnie ojciec w fotelu na kółkach. Dobrze pływam, mówi ojciec. Zapomniał, że dobrze pływał w Bałtyku. Na molo starzy i młodzi, kobiety i nawet dzieci coraz to wyciągają druciane koszyki pełne krabów. Znów czytam obcego. To stało się z powodu słońca, czytam, i prawie wierzę, choć słońce tu inne i dziś wiatr łagodny od oceanu obraca kolorowym wiatraczkiem, który kupiłam ojcu do zabawy. Potem długo wzdłuż Atlantyku popycham wózek. Czy to granica egipska? Pyta ojciec. Jeszcze nie, odpowiadam. Zresztą już nigdzie nie uciekamy. Ani on od źle zrośniętych stawów, ani ja od źle zrośniętych snów. Może tylko na trochę od ostrej woni amoniaku. Znów czytam obcego w pełnym słońcu. Kraby wybiegają z otwartych koszyków. Ich los jest przesądzony. Jakie to morze? Pyta czasem ojciec. Czyj to dom? Pytam, zbliżając się do budynku. Mój, odpowiada. I z ulgą myślę, że może się już przyzwyczaił. In the Sunshine, to Joanna and translated by Joanna Clark. Again I am reading L'étranger on a sunlit beach next to my father, who is in a wheelchair. I swim well, he says, forgetting that he used to swim well in the Baltic. On the deck, the old and the young, women and even children pull one after another wire basket full of crabs. Again, I am reading L'étranger. I read, it all happened because of the sun. And I almost believe it. Although here the sun is different, and today a breeze from the ocean turns the bright pinwheel, a toy I bought for my father. Then along the Atlantic I push the wheelchair. Is this the Egyptian border, my father asks? Not yet, I answer. Besides, we no longer run away, neither he from his poorly knitted joints, nor I from my poorly knitted dreams. Only for about an hour from the sharp stench of ammonia. Again I am reading L'étranger in full sun. Crabs escape from the open baskets, though not from their fate. What is this sea? My father asks now and then. Whose house is it? I ask, approaching the building. Mine, he answers. And I think with relief that maybe he got used to it at last.
Sometimes I write in English, sometimes in Russian. I never know when and why. I'm not going to read you a poem about New York. I'm going to read you a poem about lost love, which this city is full of. And this actually was written in English first. This is not a translation. I call it parallel poems when they are written in two different languages, but kind of on the same emotion, thought. I think it's more interesting because then just language kind of dictates how it should be written. I just don't understand direct translation. I don't believe in that, frankly, because you have to follow the language, letter. What's left of me? The same accent, scar on the palms, stacks of books in my room. That cloudy hemisphere where music stumbles over the chorus of voices. I think I'm in peace now, at least with future memories. As for the past, I only feel the touch of light sadness, like those veils of fog left in the park along the road. Only light sadness as I drive, passing the crisp suburban fall landscapes of the northern south. The frozen green grass seen only around here, soft burns of pumpkins, fragmented clouds of the Halloween web trembling in the wind. Iced firewood stacked at the door of the small store. Police car, lights dormant, secluded in the lawn. You see, that was a different layer of life. It's over now, 2 memories away. We both breathe the same cold air on the opposite sides of the transparent wall, like a sliding door in a suburban apartment. And you're still coming, looking from the other side. Your lips moving. I think I know what you're saying to me. But with you, I'm never sure. Все тоже осталось во мне, все тоже осталось, все тот же акцент и шрам на руке, и даже усталость, и книжный развал на полу, и музыка шума, и наши бездомные встречи проносятся мимо машины дороги на север, знакомой дорогой, ведущей навстречу любви, судьбе вдоль речки, сквозь годы по зоне газонов, уже изумрудных под утро, и капли плывут по стеклу, задумчивой ртутью. Это Хэллоуин, паутина на небе, на окнах, на страже, патрульные машины, сирена. И все это наше, подаренный жизни, случайный кусок, погашенный, нежный. Так кончился этот безжалостный век, другой безмятежный не нам обещает приют какой-то там доли, природа там, северный юг, лианы у школы, и пьяница с виски дешевым стоит на пороге, и выдох холодный с реки, лишь память о снеге. Я помню ту жизнь, параллельную жизнь за преградой, за тонкой прозрачной стеной остывшего сада, как будто подходишь ты снова и снова, и медленно шепчешь, и слов не понять ничего, но от этого легче. Я разбираю, как будто движение губ, безмолвное меца. Я долго смотрю, и бьется к тебе ожившее сердце.
I would like to thank Hunter, that happens to be my alma mater as well, Yakov Klots, and Tomas Venclova, who actually was one of the people that turned me on to great Russian poetry when I was sitting in a club of Russian literature at age 14. And he was already handsome dissident and a poet. I will read a poem that was first written in English, because I write in English and in Russian, and I translate from Lithuanian to English, from English to Russian, and Russian to English. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm a wandering Jew. I'm a wandering Jew, or rather, a Russian, Lithuanian, American Jew. Now I forget words not in 1 but 3 languages. My great-grandfather's 5-story house still stands on Naugarduko in Old Vilnius. I grew up around the corner on Pilimo in a communal kitchen. My grandfather's grave is buried under the broken marble and beer cans at the vandalized Jewish cemetery in Kaunas. Apparently, dead Jews can still be subjected to pogroms because the live ones from this part of the world are mostly gone. My first love, the half-Tartar wunderkind Kolya, must be building military planes someplace around Moscow or teaching others at the Bauman Institute in spite of his youthful dreams to study history and art. First husband Slava, the broken-spirited jazz lover with graying temples, still puffs a cigarette despite a repaired heart a few blocks from where we used to live, in a 70s development southwest of Moscow center. He listens to the same Coltrane records, only his wife leaves for the kitchen after the first 2 beats, and our cat is gone. I'm a wandering Jew, a psychologist, a somewhat multilingual therapist, a poet. My hometown Vilnius must contain some traces of me making my way to school through Gothic courtyards, home of my old music teacher on Basanavichus, or maybe to the biology department of the university where my father used to teach. Medieval corridors may have retained the smell of formalin he used to put the frogs to sleep with in his lab. The zoological museum with a gigantic whale jaw must be there. Luminescent Brazilian butterflies still glowing in the dark. I'm a wandering Shalom Aleichem star. These stars light up on their journey from continent to continent, and then they get extinguished, but a thin light trajectory may smolder in the night sky for a while. Перевод мой или скорее параллельное стихотворение. Я вечный жид, а точнее, я русская, американская, литовская еврейка. Теперь я забываю слова не на одном, а на 3 языках. 5-этажный дом моего прадеда все еще стоит на Новгородуку. Я выросла за углом от него, в коммуналке на Пилема. Могила дедушки погребена под осколками мрамора и пивными банками на Каунасском еврейском кладбище. Похоже, погром можно устроить и против мертвых евреев, ведь живых в этой части света уже не осталось. Моя первая любовь, полутатарин, вундеркинд Коля, наверное, строит военные самолеты где-нибудь в Подмосковье или в технилище читает лекции по квантовой механике, оставив юношеские гуманитарные мечтания. Первый муж Слава, слегка побитый жизнью любитель джаза с сединой в висках, все курит, невзирая на проблемы с сердцем, в нескольких кварталах от новостроек, где мы поселились в 70-е, на юго-западе от центра. Он продолжает слушать все те же записи Колтрейна, только жена его выходит в кухню на 3-м такте, и нашего кота там больше нет. Я вечный жид, психолог, психотерапевт, говорящий как-то на 3 языках, поэтесса. Мой город детства, Вильнюс, может быть, хранит следы моих походов в школу, через готические дворы, домой к моей учительнице музыки на Басанавичус, и на факультет естественных наук университета, где мой отец преподавал. Средневековые коридоры впитали запах формалина, которым папа усыплял лягушек в банке в его лаборатории. В зоологическом музее хранилась гигантская челюсть кита. Возможно, она там еще лежит, и бабочки бразильские на стенках по-прежнему фосфорицируют во тьме. Я блуждающая Шолом Алейхемовская звезда. Ведь эти звезды зажигаются от пути от континента к континенту и гаснут. Но тоненькая нитка траектории мерцает в темном небе несколько секунд.
Я вас представлю, потому что я этого не сделал, пока вас не было. Хорошо? As we approach the middle of the Cyrillic, actually any alphabet, the letter K, let me just say a few words about Bakhyt Kenzheev, who just made it here. Born in Kazakhstan, he started as a poet in Moscow in the 70s and was one of the founders of the famous poetic group Moskovskое время, or Moscow Time, together with Sergei Kondlevsky, Alexander Saprovsky and Alexei Tsvetkov, yet another prominent Russian poet, and one of the authors of the book also lives in New York. but is out of town. Bakhyt moved to Canada in '82 and has lived in New York for the past 10 years or so. He is the author of more than a dozen books of poetry and prose and the recipient of multiple prizes. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. I'm qualified to be the most enigmatic poet among these guys because, for a reason, because I don't have any translations into English on hand. So I'll be reading in Russian, so okay. So I'm not the most enigmatic. Okay. This one is actually about Washington Square Park and about a guy who used to sit there with a typewriter and sell poetry. Он был не просто бомж, а изрядный бывший поэт. Сутул, опрятен, с речью нескладной, носил он с собою стул складной, чемоданчик и буквы ящик из-под вина носил, и в отличие от бродяг настоящих, милостыни не просил. Наша жизнь ноль, бормотал, неволею скручена, отравлена сулемой. В Нью-Йорке в марте пахнет магнолией и цветами сакуры, боже мой. И в оттаивший парк любители лабухи привозят рояль, и труды легки, когда слушают Баха под эти запахи, разнополые юные лопухи. Какое же множество праздных и добрых собралось под открытым небом в час быка и медведя. Поставлю автограф, сочиню элегию на заказ. Мы живем в королевстве фальшивых денег, лениво думал он и хрустел огурцом на острых коленях, держа обшарпанный ремингтон. Да, к нему и ленты уже не купишь, и клавишу, треснувшую в груди, не сменишь. Любому покажет кукиш старуха смерть. Погоди, твердил про себя он, к любому опию привыкаешь. А где ответ? Разложенные на ящике, ксерокопии. Иногда покупали, но чаще нет. Я, признаться, привык к бездомному этому, скучал, когда он исчез без следа, как водится между поэтами и всеми прочими. Наотрез не хочется верить, что дух его, хмурясь, носится удручающе тих в краях суматошных 30-х улиц, а может, 40-х.
Thank you for inviting me for this reading. My poem title is Yehuda Amichai. It's one of the great Israeli poets. And many years ago, when I lived in Ukraine, I read his poems in Polish translation in Polish literary magazine Poezja. And my first event when I visited in New York City was a presentation of English book by Yehuda Amichai. The poem not only about Yehuda Amichai, but my experience in New York City. Yehuda Amichai. Герберт, який збігнів, привів до мене Єгуду Аміхая, якого я засушив як гербарій і залишив під іменем кактуса Сабра, хоча Міхай народився в Німеччині, а Сабра – це євреї, народжені на святій землі. Листок Аміхай довго пролежав в якомусь німецькому виданні про сюрреалізм. І нарешті запах мені камінням Єрусалиму, і я те каміння порозкладав у віршах, як чорні мітки на білому полотні, і вони поросли зеленим мохом у книзі пагорбів та годин. Санду Давід і Маргаріт Матадіагу оповідали мені про Аміхая, коли з Санду ми їхали до синагоги в Новому Саді, а з Маргаріт в ресторані готелю Касіно умочали білий хліб у мед, що стікав по руках аж до ліктів у Нью-Йорку. На вечорі його пам'яті, коли читали вірші, то кожному роздали копії тих віршів двома мовами – іврит і англійська. І уся зала виспівувала звуки івриту так, наче кожен перед тим набрав повен рот маслин у буфеті. Того вечора була страшенна злива, що годі було впіймати таксі. Парасолі виривало з рук, і вони літали разом з власниками в околицях Нью-Йорк Юніверситі. Ні в кого було запитати, де ж та вулиця, де розташована Jewish Center. Одна студентка, яку я випадково зустрів на порожній вулиці, вказала мені на будівлі, навколо якої я безпорадно кружляв півгодини. І коли ми розмовляли, з її рук вирвало парасолю. І я біг за тією парасолею, бо почував себе винним. А вона стояла під дощем, усміхнена. English translation by Boris Popovich, Yehuda Mihai. Herbert brought to me Yehuda Mihai, whom I preserved as a herbarium and left under the name of Cactus Sabra, though Mihai was born in Germany, while Sabra is a Jew born in the Holy Land. The Mihai leaf lay for a long time in some German edition of Surrealism, until finally I sensed from in the sweet scent of the stones of Jerusalem, and I placed those stones in my verses, like black markers on white linen, and they overgrew with green moss in the book of hills and hours. Sandu David and Margaret Matatyahu told me stories about Amihai, when we rode with Sandu to the synagogue in Novi Sad, and with Margaret when in the restaurant at the Casino Hotel we dunked white bread and in honey, which ran down our arms all the way to our elbows in New York. At an evening in his memory, when his verses were read, everyone received copies of those verses into languages, Hebrew and English. And the entire hall chanted the Hebrew sounds as if everyone had just stuffed his mouth full of olives in the buffet. That evening there was downpour so horrendous that it was impossible to get a cap. Umbrellas were ripped out of the hands and they flew together. When the owners in the vicinity of New York University, there was no one to ask direction for that street where the Jewish Center is located. One poet, whom I happened to run into the empty street, pointed to a building around which I circled hopelessly for the half hour, and while we were talking, her umbrella was torn out on her hands and chased after that umbrella because I felt guilty about it. And she just stood there in the rain and smiled.
Again, thank you, Yasha, Professor Klots. Thank you so much. And congratulations on this amazing book. It's a very beautiful book. It's a very sincere book. And I can only imagine how much work, how much organization and went into it. Just gather us and all these appointments about anything else. And those meticulous footnotes that are so interesting. You just drop a name, you drop a fact, and there is this neat, very thorough footnote that Professor provided for just a little detail that in my case, very often is much more interesting than the detail that I drop. So
That's true.
Congratulations. I will read, and so I admire this book and Professor Klots so much that I couldn't help but obey and read about New York as he asked me to. But it's a very strange feeling because the poem in question was written so many years ago. It's actually it's scary to pronounce the number, and it's more than 20 years ago. And it was sort of translated or parallel translated, as Andrei put it, parallel recomposed pretty much at the same time, shortly after, in collaboration with Alexander Sumerkin. So I'll read this ancient text. This is when one comes to New York from Moscow and suddenly discovers that, just like in pre-digital photos sometimes would overlap, juxtapose, so do two cities, and it especially is apparent in subway. Пора вернуться к самому началу, как в хорошо заверченном романе. Пора вернуться к самому началу, войти и встать надолго в хвост вагона, и сумку привалив к опасной двери, покачиваясь, долго нависать над схемой линий метрополитена. Мне нравится название этих станций. Вот 77-я улица, а вот уже 42-я. Боже мой, как хороши неназванные вещи. Как пальцы пробегут по позвонкам, так дождь бежит себе, не называя, смывая ложной схожести пыльцу. В местах, где рифмы долго не живут, как хороши, как свежие повторения. Если померещится значение, и, Боже упаси, какой-то тайный смысл, смахни его, как рифму. Повторяясь, скажу тебе опять, в повторах этих, бессмысленных подобиях, возвращениях нет ничего. Один лишь теплый свет бесценного сквозного бормотания. Как эта осень пасмурна, как нас тревожат эти надписи на сваях. Кошмарное бывает величаво, особенно когда глядишь с моста, и вывеска багровая отеля похожа на плакат за коммунизм. Я не увижу, как его снимают. И я тебе еще скажу, схватясь за поручень серебряный в десятках блестящих отпечатков, близоруко склонясь над вечной схемой метро, как будто это карта звезд, скажу. Зевак не помнит, не накопит ничего, ни странствия, ни грустное влечение, как капли ласточки, как пальцы по звонкам. Смотри сюда скорей, смешно, щекотно, и я тебе еще скажу, никто, похоже, что никто на нас не смотрит сверху. And this is the English text. Double exposure, Moscow, New York. It's time to go back to the beginning, like in a tightly knit, elaborate novel. It's time to go back to the beginning, to get in, to stop at the car's far end, to drop the bag against the scary door, and keeping balance, hover over the map of our city subway. I will also tell you, having grabbed the silver handle covered by a dozen glittering fingerprints and leaning over the mighty subway map as if it were a star map, I will tell you, an idle rider remembers nothing, saves only losses. I like the numbered names of passing stations. Now it's 77th and now already 42nd. Look how sweet the things that rest unnamed, like fingers down the spine, like rain that runs around but never names, and washes off the dust of false resemblance in places where rhymes don't stay for long. How sweet, how fresh these repetitions. And if you see a ghost of message or
God forbid, some hidden meaning, sweep it away like an annoying rhyme. Repeating myself, I'll say that as for repetitions, for senseless similes, returns, and going backs, there is nothing to them. They're but a one late, but precious stitching matter. One day go up Museum Mile and find a green corroded goddess by a bench, with arms half open. Into the middle of the solemn gesture, the old late Soviet joke. Remember, a joker, stop the times. How foggy this fall is, how badly we're bothered by the billboards on the road. Nightmare can be magnificent, and more so if watched from an iron bridge with peeling paint and a maroon and huge and dusty sign of the hotel looks like a head to communism. Look, neither wandering nor a sad attraction, like raindrops to a bird, like fingers to the spine. Quick, look here, feels funny, ticklish. And I will also tell you that no one, or so it seems, no one is watching us from above.
Еще два заряда. Думаю, должен хватить 40.
Good evening. I wanted to say that I'm very thankful for including me into this starry company. And I wanted to say that I'm going to read a poem, not quite about New York, but about communication. When I first came to Greece, I noticed that there are cars passing with the word metaphor written on them. And I figured out later on that it meant post carrier. So I find that it's a very big part of transition or immigration or relocation is to deal with this, with carrying over the meanings. And so this poem is about, it's about the fatigue of metaphors. Серый возьми, он и есть, а не войлок, не лебеди яйца, синий, синий, а не теневые места вод, не лопасти лестниц, не синяк, черноте, желтизне, несравненным, в хранилище склянок метафоры нет. Нет ее в головах, и в забывчивой речи у склонных сравнивать. Цвет позабыл человек. Цвет позабыл человека. Гори светофор, вытекай желток. Сирый голубь, как голубь, и куст в цветах. Вот такой в темноте цвет прибудет и после зрения. В радужном масле, луж, в зеленке на бедной губе. На глазете гриба, на скобе флага в знак поражения белых и красных. Там, где луч под ветвям отцветающих и беспристрастных преломление ищет себе. Сейчас я прочту перевод этого стихотворения. I'm going to read the translation of this poem by Dana Golin. Take gray, for instance. It is just that, gray. Not Yeats' wild swans, or boiled wool, or felt. While blue is only blue and not a bruise, not shaded depth of lakes, nor flights of stairs. Uncomparable black and yellow have no metaphors in archives of the jars, just as they don't in the oblivious minds and rambling speech of those prone to compare. We have forsaken color. Color has too forsaken us. Let run the orange yoke. Let street lights flash their red and green. The doves like any other dove. The flowering bush is nothing but itself, and in the dark, the color will persist long past the end of vision, in the gleam of oily puddles, in the mushroom cups, lacquer-like sheen, in iodine on a scab over one's mangled lip, in buttered flags to indicate the feet of reds or whites, overexposed, they're hard to tell apart. Their purpose will be spelled out in the press and celebrated in the Rukus song. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I just wonder if somebody is here who does not understand Russian. Are there people like that here? No, I guess. So, the poem I'm going to read is actually written originally in English, but I lost the original, so it's my Russian version. But I want to say something about Yasha, because what the project that you made, is unique, did not happen in the first or second wave of immigrants. We did have anthologies, but they haven't been interviewed, and we really do not know much about these people, because nobody undertook this job that you've done. So not only thank you, not only it's unique, it's a precedent, but I just hope that this book will stay. And thank you everybody for sharing this event. I mean, time goes on, but nothing repeats itself. I also want to say something, that after this poem I will read another one in English, which is not a parallel poetry, but it's a sort of performance, and I work in a different sort of genre, which is a concrete poetry. I write for public spaces and exhibit it, and so the second one will be exactly about that. В Америке принято спрашивать: вы какой поэт? В 80-е можно было услышать от вполне приличных людей с образованием: я поэт-сюрреалист. От неожиданности я не могла удержаться от смеха. Они обижались, это не шутка, это серьезно. Это как бы если бы мы сказали, что мы латинские поэты, или акмеисты, или поэты метафизики. Сначала я думала, что они действительно без комплексов старых культур. Потом поняла, что у них другие правила игры, но долго не умела ответить, какой я поэт. Теперь запросто отвечаю, что я поэт политический, постсоветский, иммигрантский, русско-еврейский, феминистский, испытавший влияние футуризма, афроамериканской поэзии и нью-йоркской конкретной школы 60-х. Можно я встану, поскольку это... Capitalists are afraid of communists. Communists are afraid of imperialists. Colonialists are afraid of communists and of the locals and tribalists. Armies are afraid of armies and of civilians. Civilians are afraid of policemen, of immigrants and of politicians. Policemen are afraid of civilians and of students and local immigrants. Socialists are afraid of workers, of civilians, of armies and of conservatives. Officials are afraid of revolutionaries, of politicians and of officials. Tribalists are afraid of progressives, progressives are afraid of fundamentalists. Socialists are afraid of revolutionaries, of radicals and of communists. Intellectuals are afraid of officials, of policemen and of governments. Intellectuals are also afraid of armies, and all of them are afraid of women. of women and children, all women and children. Armies are afraid of intellectuals, especially afraid of philosophers. Imperialists are afraid of communists, of socialists, of officials, of fundamentalists, of immigrants, of the locals, and of philosophers.
I think if we continue, may I get up? I feel weird. Like, well, I'm sorry, you will have to excuse my back. But I feel weird not facing people. Okay, I'm gonna, I don't write in English. I write in Russian, but I translate other people's poetry into English in collaboration also. I'll read a poem. I was in a very I approached it in a very disciplined way. I was asked to read something about New York. So the first one is about New York. If we get to the second round, the second one will be about immigration. So I want to read a poem about New York at the time when our city was wounded. In 2001, and you all remember, those who were in New York, how that felt, and nothing could console, and poetry consoled a little bit for a while. And I was reading for days. I was reading Rimbaud, Illumination, the Illuminations, and it's a cycle, it's a series of prose poetry that has a poem, Les Villes, the cities, which starts with that line, Ce sont des villes, these are the cities. So, стихотворение называется «Похороны в Новой Англии», осень 2001 года. Ce sont des villes, безбурные глаза, открой вчерашнюю газету, там эхо лета, не спеша гляди немного сбоку, как душа в таинственный фонарь, соседскую террасу. У них там тот же бейсболист, глядит с листа, гляди, не наглядись, он через 3 часа оденется в кирасу. Гляди сейчас, чтоб через 3 часа прикуску пить горячее отчаяние и врачевать от массовых смертей. Гляди, вот гибнет мир без новостей. Ты подавился жабой, как молчанием. Как опыта бесплодное насилие, ты то узнал, что знал, и случай, и неминучий сумрак, черная лазурь. Ангелы поют о белых скалах дура, голубки островерхой шпилем, указывающим строго в бирюзу, все в ту же бирюзу, и клены, как в огне. Тебе прожить чужую смерть и умереть чужою жизнью, мне в эту твердь глядеть сквозь электрическую зелень, и посреди шатра, как посреди костра, ты жабу выплюнешь, как страшная сестра, на вылет болью спелую расстрелян. This is a translation, it's a very good translation. It was translated a lot by Richard Sieverts, who is a terrific translator. Memorial service in New England, fall 2001. Ce sont des villes. Open the unstormy eyes, open yesterday's newspaper, the echo of summer in it. Look out calmly, look at an angle, like a soul at its body, into the green lantern glow of your neighbor's deck. Everybody looking at the same baseball player on the front page. Have a good look, you can't get enough. In 3 more hours, he will turn to bronze. Look now, for in 3 hours you drink of hot despair, sucking on a sugar cube, and be a healer of mass death. Look, here ends the world with no news. grim, scary sister choking on a toad. The fruitless violence of experience. You only learn what you know. Chance, inevitable dusk, the black azure. And now the angels sing of the white cliffs of Dover in a ridge-roofed church, its spire pointing into the blue. And in that same turquoise and maples on fire, you are to live the other's death and die the other's life, whereas I am to look into the sky through the electric glow of green, and under a canopy, as in the midst of bonfire, you'll spit out your silence like a toad at the ripening point of pain. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank all of you for coming here, and thank Yakov for inviting me and for doing that incredible book, really significant book. So I don't live in New York, I live in New Haven, and I have only 2 poems about New York. And moreover, I am an odd fellow here because I write in a non-Slavic language, which is Lithuanian. It has almost nothing, well, it has something in common, but it's rather difficult to notice it. It has something in common with Russian and with Polish and with Czech, but almost as much as with German or English. It's a totally different language and a very difficult one, spoken by only 3 million of people. So, and I will not read my poem in English, because I was told more than once, when I read poetry in English, nobody understands a word. So, somebody else will be so kind to do it. And there are at least 2 persons in this room who know Lithuanian. First of all, Halberstadt, and then Yakov Klots himself. He speaks, I would say, well, adequate Lithuanian. Okay, now the poem. The poem in Lithuanian about an emigre, about my friend, who died, well, probably about 20 years ago. She was my friend from Vilnius. She was not only my friend, she also was on very friendly terms with Joseph Brodsky, for example, and many others. She worked in a, of all places, she worked in the World Trade Center. But she died before the famous event, and the notorious event, if you want. She died of lung cancer. So it's dedicated to her. A Jewish lady from Vilnius who was married to a painter, not a very successful painter, who died also. Tarp kitų skubesnių naujienų frazė ragelį. Ar girdėjai? Senokai. Deja, jie labai kamavus. Nežinau, namie ar kitur, dabar nedažnai lankausi tuose vitrinų ir tunelių tyruos. Neatspėjau ir mėnesio. Rodos pavasarį būna kiek lengviau pasitraukti. Juodojančios sniego ant glinų pumpurų ir valkų bjauragis apramina, nes atgimti daros netaip jau svarbu. Aleksandras, Eduardas, Ksenija ir dar gyva, išsiplaškiusios kartos menu tik pūką ant skruosto, krebluojančią tarseną didelės pėdas, per ryškūs lūpų dažai, ne iš karto suprantamos akys, stalčiuose kaspinas, kvitai ir čekiai, jau pusė gyvenimo šičia. Treji pirmieji metai praslenka veltui, taip sako visi. Ne visiškai tai, ko tikėjais, šaltis pletuos laiškuos iš gimtinės, kuriuo nesikeičia nei kalėjimų sienos, nei laikraščių skirtys. už grotų pirmąją aukštę, reklamos antenos ir purvas, ties akiračių smailas, mormonų šventyklos bokštas, neišvirkštas. Heroinas, ne Opijus liaučiai šiandien tvirtintų Karlas. Nematau, ar jį vagone jau sėdi už vairo, vis vien virš galvos grindinys, betonas, gelžgaliai būsimas kapas, patamsyje girgžda liftai, sausas kontorų kurys, kur tavo akcentas nekliudo, tačiau neteikia vilčių. Nuo skausmo pagelbsti ne žemynų kaita, o mirtis. Pradžioje ji padidina skausmą. Iš tikrųjų, tiek laiko, po smilkinio renkasi raukšlės, pro riešą, gal dar labiau pro pirštus, prasišviečia kauliukai. Kitam gyvenime buvom pažįstami, ten sidabravo ožekšniai, skroblynai lėlėjo į slėnį. Ne, nieko tarp mudviejų. Gimšė paskaitytas eiles, bičiulius, vieną kartą net barnis prie durų, kur pora bevaidžių sfinksų iš juosvo cemento tikriausiai stūkso ir šiandien. Paskui geresniojoj Bronkso daly molbertas iškreivintos šaknys, turinčios reikšti nenykstantį ryšį su tėvynės gamta ir taip toliau. Nes gamta atsilygins, kūnas nugalės sielą, limfos greitkelių skuba ląstelės, bronchai džiūsta ir medikas ištaria graikišką žodį, paaukojantį mus brauno judesiui, šarmui ir rūgščiai. Debesys, drėgnas granitas, pilkas vandens gomulys, šitos upės neteka niekur. Prie garažo prislinkęs meškeinas, snukeliu pabarbena duris, voveriai kibirkščiuoja spygliuos. Įžiūrėdamas pirmą žibintą, beveik negalvoja apie naktį. Širdis atkakliai tarsi kūdikio kumštis, daužo tai, ko nemoka įvardyti. Lapai apipila šaką, kliūsės krusdėliais veidrodį blizga dažų buteliukas, neįrėmintos sensta trapecijos, plaštakos žvaigždės. Brangios tik jai, visa tai buvo senokai. Kūno gėda ir vargas, kosulys, nenumaldomas išskyrų kvapas, įsipykęs noras, kad tai greičiau pasibaigtų, abejingi praeiviai. Atleisk man tylą, ragelį.
And now here's the English version of the poem, The Immigrant. Among more urgent news, briefly, in the phone receiver. Didn't you know? A while ago, alas, she suffered quite a bit. I don't know if it was at home. These days, I rarely visit that deserted zone of shop windows and underpasses. I don't know the month either. Perhaps it's easier to pass away in spring. Snow's blackening muck, tree buds stained with cold puddles. This calms one down, until one loses interest in resurrection. Alexander, Edward, Xenia, a scattered generation. My memory calls up a downy cheek, guttural accent, clumsy feet, lipstick too bright, eyes not immediately concrete, in a drawer, a ribbon, receipts and checks, half a life spent here. The first 3 years of exile wasted, everyone agrees. Not quite what you had in mind. Chilliness and rare letters from home, where neither prison walls nor newspaper columns change. Outside the basement windows grating, ads, antennae, dirt. Near the horizon, the Mormon temple's needle spire, like a syringe. I can't see it. Was she on the train or at the steering wheel? All the same. Overhead, asphalt, concrete, scrap metal, a feature grave. Elevators complain in darkness. The dry honeycombs of offices where your accent isn't a hindrance, nor does it inspire confidence. Changing continents doesn't alleviate pain. Only death does. To begin, it's worse. The fact is, so much time has passed. Wrinkles knit by the temple, bones are prominent at the wrist, or more so through the fingers. We knew each other in another life. Spindle trees shone like silver there. Hornbeam groves fell to the valley. There was nothing between us, just arguments about friends, poems read. A quarrel once by a door where two gray black cement sphinxes, perhaps, still stand. Later, in the Bronx's better part, her husband's easel, twisted roots meant to signify the enduring link to the motherland, nature, etc. For nature always gets even. The body overcomes the soul. Cells rush the limbs highway, the lungs dry, and a doctor utters the Greek word that offers us up in sacrifice to the Brownian law of alkali and acid. Clouds, damp gray night, a gray larynx of water. These rivers flow nowhere. A raccoon, skulking past the garage, knocks at the door with its snout. A squirrel sputters in the tree's needles. When I focus on the first street lamp, I almost forget the darkness. Like an infant's fist, the heart is knocking hard at what it cannot name. A branch sheds its leaves, ants labor. A paint pot flames in the mirror. Unframed trapezes, hands, stars, dear only to her, are growing old. It was all long ago. The shame, the body's degradation, the cough, the body fluid stench, the damned desire for the end to come quickly, and indifferent passers-by. Forgive my silence on the end of this line.
What translation is it?
Translated by Ellen Hensey.
Ellen Hensey. Well, yes, I can tell you, Ellen Hensey is an expatriate American poet living in Paris. She translated much of my work recently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been unprecedented to hear so many different voices in different languages and in such different poetics that I think we've just embodied, in a sense, what New York City is, at least in its East European aspect. We have about an hour to talk or to listen to more poems. Let's take a short break from the poems and talk first, and then we'll see if we are out of questions. The poems may save us from silence. Perhaps it's not a question that, of course, requires or even calls for an answer, but rather a note that perhaps our conversation could pick up on or take off from. And very briefly put, perhaps that note should sound as something like, if New York has a language, how have your relationships with this language of this city developed over time and over space, given the immigrant experience that all of these poets have gone through, and also perhaps given the moment when our reading is taking place, at a moment when the question becomes somewhat is gaining assumes a second or yet another life of its own, so to speak. So once again, that's just a question that is being asked in the book, perhaps if only for that reason. It does not need to be answered. Again, you could all read what these poets are saying about it, but let's give the floor to you instead.
A huge thanks to everyone. I wanted to ask you, when you listen to each other's poems, do you hear the same New York? And do you come to New York with your own rhythm? In the first place, do you derive any new rhythms from the city itself? Thank you.
I think that I came to New York from the city, which is so thick and overstuffed with literary mythologies as St. Petersburg is, like Polina, somebody here from Petersburg. So I think that I also lived in then Leningrad on Radisheva Street, Radisheva. And so next to this is Rileva, and next to that is also Pushkinskaya, and next to that is Lermontovsky Prospect. And my son went to school on Mayakovskaya Street. So it's like, like it is topography, but it was also mythology. It's also like a text you read, right? And when my first book was published, was prepared for publishing in Paris at Syntaxis, I also lived in the 16th arrondissement, which is like exactly the same thing, okay? So it's a Goncourt, and then you go to the left, and you see that Rue Zala, and you go somewhere else, and you see Maupassant, and you see Balzac, and you see So when I came to New York, I felt that, oh my God, so good, it looks like Moscow. Because I belong to these Leningraders who loved Moscow and lived in Moscow a lot. So it was, I would not say that I brought the rhythm, but I think that I was rather departing and happily dislocating or displacing myself from this heavy-duty ensemble and the layers of tradition and layers of isms and so forth and so forth. I wanted to escape that. And I spent about 1.5 years in Europe before I came to New York. So it was this incredibly liberating feeling that here you don't need to belong and repeat and sort of be influenced and oppressed, I would say, by these traditions and names and so forth. And what is interesting also, another thing regarding my experience, is that after many different departments in Leningrad University, I finally ended up writing a diploma on Khotemas. And at that time, like mid-70s, some people were still alive, and especially widows, and I saw a lot of real original pieces of paper, and especially architectural drawings. And so when I came to New York, I kind of recognized these models, модули, такие архитектурные модули. И ты входишь в магазин, и ты видишь, что вот именно эти чашки и делал Малевич. Да, и ты их видел, ты их знаешь, они тебе родные. Так что я как бы переехала в тот... Я очень не люблю слово эстетика, но я его употребляю иногда. Вот, так что я переехала вот эту эстетику, которая была мне знакома, но не реализованная, да, эстетика. А здесь как раз все были просто без ума от русского авангарда. Оказалось, что все очень любят Хлебникова, там я не говорю про Маяковского. И вот встречались действительно люди, которые говорили: я поэт-сюрреалист, а он твой ровесник. Да, и ты думаешь, вообще, в каком ты месте находишься? Поэтому я не знаю, отвечаю ли я на ваш вопрос, Вася, но, по крайней мере, вот какие-то такие ощущения, безусловно, у меня были.
What's the problem with fish? What's technical? Is that the answer? Sounds like the answer.
That was about melanoma.
That is an answer.
Yes. Mine was totally different experience because my emigration was actually an exile. I had to renounce my citizenship when I left Poland in 1969 because of 1968 happening. now nobody knows. When I talk to people, nobody knows what happened in 1968 in Poland, or very few people know. So let's say simply it was a traumatic experience. And on one hand, on the other hand, it gave me, even in a trauma, a totally different perspective. First, my first several years was, this is not home and I have no home. Then I don't need home. I can live, and one of my poems is, I am here, I live in my own life. And of course it started a transformation, both languages and way of life, looking at certain points, and freedom, which is painful. However, it was totally new experience. For example, the first when I was going to rent, we were going to rent an apartment, and the apartment had like I don't know, more than 2 rooms, and I said, do I have to go and ask someone if I can have more than 2 rooms? Because it was totally impossible in Poland. You had to have a certain amount of meters, right? Square meters. So, and after many years, I came to the point where I write in one of my poems that New York for me was a boat and a harbor. The way of arriving, which I learned here, and a place to which I arrive. I don't know if this is. We talked once even with Vasyl, because one of the on the topic of ocean, it is a tremendous, at least it was for me, a tremendous experience that I go. Let's say I take subway, right? Few stations, and I can see ocean. Ocean, which for people in the Eastern Europe, I mean, it's not something that you can see, that you can touch. And once one of the critics said that I don't say which ocean I've seen. And we talked with Vasyl, you remember? Yeah. Doesn't matter. It's ocean. And it is totally different. It gives you a perspective.
That's a really cool idea, I think. Ocean is one of the rhythm producers of this city. And I would say another thing, and lots of conversations in Yasha's book are also dedicated to the underground metro. Another important rhythm producer or something. But I'm somehow sitting here thinking about what Marina Temkina said, that it is kind of amazing that this person emerged, or this idea emerged, to talk to the poets in New York, poets from Eastern Europe, and that this idea emerged only a couple of years ago. And I'm sitting thinking about what kinds of conversations would have happened with the poets before us. And I'm thinking about huge poets and successful poets and survivors poets and poets who were total losers. These are my favorites. So I think that basically this book is mapping many things, and some of them are total shadows. And this is what makes it so interesting. Also, people who are there, people who are not there, people who could be there, people for whom we speak, because whether we want it or not, and this is one of the dangers of the craft, that somehow, you know, the Pythian quality, we speak for the others, not that others ask us actually, but this is what we do. So I'm kind of thinking not only about rhythms, but about voices, about all kinds of voices in this topic. Poets from Eastern Europe and New York, whatever it is.
I just will speak very briefly. I came from a republic, a former republic, Lithuania, a small country that was really always torn by, you know, ethnic strife. Lithuania has a painful history. It's Holocaust, it's 10% of the population deported to Siberia when the Soviets came, and it was always torn. And I spoke Russian to my father. My mother's better language was Lithuanian. I went to a Lithuanian English school. And I have to say that in Lithuania, and Thomas, you may agree or disagree, but people were mostly defined by who they were ethnically. They were Lithuanians, Jews, Russians, Poles, and so on. And you could not escape that. You know, in other words, even if people got together, you know, 2 Poles came with 1 Jew and 1 Lithuanian. So, Jewish immigration started to Israel there. So, since I was 12, I really wanted to immigrate because, you know, you always carry the burden of something that was unsaid, Holocaust denial, anti-Semitism, hatred between Lithuanians and Russians, Russians and Poles, Poles and Lithuanians, Lithuanians and Latvians, and so on and so forth. So I went to school in Moscow, and when I came to New York, I fell in love with it very fast, because I remember writing my first resume and standing on the stairs of public library and looking down with a person I just met there. He was writing a script, you know, and we started talking. I spoke English because, you know, I went to an English school. And I felt that this was a city where people didn't care who I was. And it was very liberating, that nobody gave a damn. And I think this is great. This is one of the best features of New York, that you could be anyone, you could be anybody. And the city is tolerant, and it really doesn't care who you are. I think it's fantastic.
I don't know what to say. I think that one of the greatest things about New York City is that it's so diverse. Diverse, I don't mean ethnically or otherwise, but generally. Like, people will say that there is everything in New York. And a lot of my friends come here from Russia to visit, and a lot of them would say that what a magnificent city this is, and how they feel they were born here. And there is a minor fraction who would say that, oh God, the city is so dirty and disgusting, people are so ugly. You know, when I first heard that, I was absolutely amazed, because I fell in love with the city instantly when I saw it 30 odd years ago. And now I live here and I enjoy it thoroughly.
I would like to say a couple of words in defense of New York. I'm from Moscow, and I spent first several years of my life here, not in New York actually. We didn't come to New York, in Washington, Maryland, and then in Texas and Houston. And then first time when I came to New York, and I just felt it's like back home. It's like in Moscow, somewhat chaotic, somewhat strange and all this. And then to me, there is very important aspect. Well, I mean, everybody spoke about this, but to me, the very important aspect is that if you really feel at home here in the United States, in America, you really getting deeper into the American culture, this is the place to be. For me, it's very, very much alive. I have a book, as Yasha mentioned, my last book is called Poet in the City, and then I had a project with my friend, unfortunately late now, Kurt Brown, of New York history of the New York literary cafes and clubs and all this. And it is unbelievable. Here's a white horse, Dylan Thomas, okay? This is a Café au Roi, and this is where current Nobel laureate in literature just started. In this very little cafe in the village, you know, where he was given refried fries and hamburgers in the back room after the late session. You know, and you know, this is where Talking Heads started. And on purpose, I'm putting together poetry and rock and blues and R&B, because in this city, it's all, I'm not even talking about visual artists, you know, this. So to me, when I walk in this city, you know, I just feel I'm in the right place where everything is happening. And I think it's a very good idea, and we have to thank Professor Klots, you know, for this project.
Thank you. I think that New York is very important in my literary biography. My first feeling about that city, I think, okay, I hate New York. Because I love Europe, I love my Ukraine, what is that, America and New York. And after 3 years living in New York, I published poetry book, 38 poems about New York and something else. In Ukrainian literature, for Ukrainian literature, New York is a very important city because after World War II, 7 young person came to New York: Bogdan Boychuk, Bogdan Rubchak, Yuri Tarnavsky, Zhenya Vasylkivska, Yuri Kolomeyevich, etc. And in early 1950s, create New York group of poets. It's a legendary group in Ukrainian literature in 20th century, second half of 20th century. I think that New York create, for me, a new poetry and prose language, because I preserve my Ukrainian language, I think, in New York. It's a paradox, but it's true. That's all. Thank you.
I'll just quickly answer the question. I think we strayed away a little bit from the question. The question was about whether we recognize rhythms that are united by the theme of New York, right? Something like this. I think I can only speak for myself, of course, and I think that there is many rhythms and vibrations as there are people in this audience and here. And New York is a very powerful creature, as we all know. And one's rhythm is crushed, inevitably. Whatever you bring with you, it's crushed. and it's a very masculine creature as well. And I happen to be from a city that is very feminine, Moscow. So Moscow is just crushed just like that. And if you're in the mood to subdue to this new rhythm, to this new structure, that's a pleasure of new findings. If you're not in the mood to be crushed, then there is a conflict, and probably from that conflict could arise some new rhythm or some new vibration, right? Some new potential, something like this. And of course, the ocean and the border, and the Manhattan being an island where you have nowhere to run from. That's another, juxtaposition on that rhythm.
We were speaking English, right? So,
It doesn't matter because there is
some people were talking.
That's okay. But you do. Okay.
I was just thinking about once I read, I think it was Krakauer who said that once you take photograph, you illuminate, you immediately lose the subject. The memory of something you photograph is lost. I think probably a similar thing happens in a way with how you perceive difference, a different place. Because when I moved to New York from Moscow, and I do agree that Moscow is a feminine creature. It changes sizes, it decorates itself, it does a lot of interesting things. But I felt almost no difference. I felt like, in a way, maybe it was delusional that if I would take a subway long enough, I would come out somewhere at the station in the outskirts of Moscow. It felt like a big city. It felt the same in so many ways. Until, a few months later, I received, with somebody who arrived from another, with occasion, I just received photographs from summer photographs of myself and my children the last summer in a Russian village. And these photographs were just 3 or 4 months old. It was just last summer, and I was eager to see them. I was standing at, in some subway station in New York, and I immediately took them out of the package, and I started looking at them, and all of a sudden I realized that it was sort of an absolute past. I felt I could have been 20 years, 50 years, a few thousand years between myself looking at these photographs and these events that were photographed. And that moment, I felt that the difference between this city and that is tremendous, and the distance is huge. I almost felt like the entire ocean and its length and its expansion separating me from that village and from that city, and the difference was very evident. And the moment I realized that all of my ideas about similarities and the same rhythm and the same big city, and they kind of vanished, and I realized that I'm in a very, very different place that I have to learn. And probably it's a long process, and it's still happening.
Okay, so speaking about New York, well, first of all, I don't live in New York. And I am generally happy living not in New York. I was brought up in the same city as Anna Halberstadt, namely Vilnius. She told the truth about Vilnius, that in Vilnius a person is defined mainly by the ethnic origin, which is terrible. and New York, but well, also Paris, also London, don't define people by their ethnic origin. And this is a liberating experience, that's true. But Vilnius is, she did not tell that Vilnius is a beautiful city. It's a small, European, Baroque, very chaotic city, very connected to, yes, to nature, around it and inside it, so to speak. And I was quite used to that beautiful, chaotic city. Then I saw St. Petersburg, with its perspective, with its ensembles, with an incredible river in the middle of it, and with its literary memories. Then Moscow. Moscow is a repugnant city if you don't know the right people. But it is rather easy to find the right people in Moscow. The same about New York, by the way. Then I saw Paris. My first emigre experience was 3 weeks in Paris. Which I liked. Because it was sort of St. Petersburg to the second power. Then I came to New York and entered it by a car of my friend. My friend was driving, of course, from New Jersey by the tunnel. And I was pretty sure that I will see, well, 22nd or 23rd century. Something incredible, something surpassing your imagination. We went out of the tunnel at the end of the 42nd Street, then that was more than 30 years ago. So it was even worse than it is now. And instead of 23rd century, I saw a very shabby and less than interesting 19th century. Beginning of the 20th century, but in very bad taste, in very bad shape. So I was, after Paris, I was absolutely crushed and never could find anything nice in it. Then I went to the subway, also more than 30 years ago. It is still less than pleasant, but more than 30 years ago it was definitely less than pleasant. So I thought, well, my goodness, I would like to come back to the Soviet Union. That was my first reaction. Then I understood that it would make little sense, and I just never did it. But then I started to like some places in America. New Haven, because everything is within a walking distance. There are, of course, those houses of my colleagues, professors, which are not within a walking distance, but that does not count. The downtown of New Haven is something like downtown, well, not of Vilnius, but of Kaunas, of the second Lithuanian city, something very similar. And New York, then I understood an interesting thing, that in New York you probably can feel yourself as in a small European city, as in a shtetl. I am not Jewish myself, and my idea of a shtetl is probably wrong, but this is my feeling. You have an apartment, well, let us say a small apartment. You come to the street, there is a laundry, there is one shop, another shop, the third shop, there is a small cafe. So you can live in that block for your entire life and feel yourself at home. Like in New Haven, like in Vilnius. And this is also one of the liberating experiences of New York. I think, I could talk for just very long, but I will stop here. Thank you.
Well, I don't agree. I don't agree with you either. Even though Moscow is a feminine city, I know. And New York is a very